Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Time Traveling Taylor, and sadly, it just came to my attention that YouTube has a pretty strict time traveling policy. In fact, if you zoom out on desktop, you can see that loop button. That's all about time loops. They're pretty strict on it, so if you create a time loop like, stuck back in here, like we did in November when we covered Brian Boru, we went back in the past to cover this month, which is Jeria, which is area control trick taking, in November, which was Nosotros, which was team games. We now have to make a team game in this month to close the loop. Super confusing, very time travel wonkiness. It's kind of like that movie, Loopy. It's about time loops, like Loopist. I think it was Loopin' Louie. I'll throw the poster up there. And I thought it would fit on this channel. I know I break the fourth wall a lot, so I thought it'd be fun to break the fifth wall, which is breaking the fourth wall through time. I think, I'm not up on my physics, but I think that is correct. So we will be covering a team-based game today. It's going to be specifically Vivaldi. It's a game by Marcello Bertocci. I think that's how to say it. I'm part Italian, so I should probably get that right. And it's actually based on kind of an older classic Italian trick-taking game called Briscola Chiamata. The hook is 5 players only, and it's a team game where the person who's declaring trump and kind of the pain suit of the game, they're going to pick a card, and that's going to be in another player's hand, possibly, and that other player is going to be a secret teammate to the person who called it. So it could be the person you're sitting next to, it could be across the table, you don't know. So in a really cool kind of twist on teammates is you have a hidden teammate that you don't know until later in the game. Or right away, because they could just play that card. It's a really cool concept. Let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in Vivaldi is made up of 4 suits numbered 1 through 10. Here we have the game set up for the only 5 players. So the deck of 40 cards is shuffled and dealt out equally with no cards cut out. So each player is going to get 8 cards. A hand of Vivaldi starts with a bidding round to see what trump color is and what the pain color is. The bidding to determine who declares what trump is starts with a random player. Let's say it's Macaroni here. And how the bidding works is it starts at 10 and it'll go down all the way to 1. So let's say Macaroni bids 10 and then the Porco Rosso character here bids 6, the Italian seasoning bids 2, and then over here the bow tie guy, they'll bid 1, and it comes to Pepper here. And so now you might be wondering, well, how do you bid lower than 1? After you hit 1, you then start bidding with points. And these are points that you need to get in the game to make up for the fact that you're bidding harder and harder. So for example, maybe the Macaroni, it comes to them, they pass, comes to Porco, they say 1 plus 5, meaning that they're going to win by 5 more than they usually would win by, so which would be 1. So they're saying, we'll win by at least 6. So then Italian seasoning comes to them, they say 1 plus 10, and then they've already passed. So it comes to Domino's again, they pass, maybe Porco pass. So now the bid is 1 plus 10. What that means is 1 is going to be the card that when the Italian seasoning player who won the bid will declare what trump is, the 1 in that trump suit is going to be the secret partner of the Italian seasoning here. So, for example, again, looking at Italian seasoning's hand here, they have a fair amount of cards in the fall suit, and they don't have the 1. So maybe they say fall is the trump color. So what that means is whoever has the 1 in the fall suit is going to be their secret partner. So they don't know who it is when they're declaring. Only the person who has the 1 card. To help keep track of what the trump suit is in the game, there's this included card set, which has all the 4 seasons. So you pick the correct one for the trump suit, so fall. And then as you can see here, this kind of small circle here has the other suit that's going to be the pain suit, which matters for scoring, which I'll get into a little bit. So you can just put that up here as a helpful indication for the players. Another quick example of bidding just to solidify the idea here. So let's say Macaroni bid 10, Porco bid 6, and then everyone just passed after that. So Porco would then call trump suit again, like normal, but the 6 in trump would be their secret partner. So the first number is kind of just which card is going to be your secret partner for whoever wins the bid. And then the plus amount is just the differential that that team has to cover when they count up points at the end. After the bidding is done and we know what trump is and what the pain suit is, then you'll start the hand. So it starts with the first player. Again, it was the macaroni. And looking at their hand, they don't have the 1 of trump, so they're not on a team with the caller, who was the spicy Italian seasoning here. So they don't want the seasoning person to have many points. So maybe they just lead with an 8 here. The trick taking in Vivaldi is may follow, with the highest trump winning the trick, and if there's no trump, highest of the lead suit. So it's lead with summer, or kind of red apples there. Looking at the next player's hand, Porco Rosso, they're also not on the caller's team with the Italian seasoning there. So they are looking at this, maybe they think that's a lot of points, so they want to trump in with the 3. Why the Porco player may be trumped is because points are just positive for the rank unless they're the bad suit up there. So in this trick, this is 8 points plus 3 points so far, which is a fair amount so far in the trick. So maybe the Italian seasoning person is looking at this, and they play 2 in the weak season. So what that does is the cards in the weak season are negative their value. So this is actually -2 into the trick. So it's still a good trick, it's still 9 points. But coming to Bowtie here, they actually do have the 1 in trump. So they are on the team with the secret seasoning. So they could, if they want, they could just play this 1 here, and now everyone at the table would know they are on a team with that person, but maybe they want to keep it hidden just for a little bit to maybe try to trick the other players into thinking they're on the good team and maybe grab some more points. But maybe they're not sure if they want the good team to get too many points here, so maybe they will play a -4. This is a kind of a subtle way, maybe, that they're hinting that they might be on that team as well. So players might be a little dubious of that play. Coming to the crushed pepper here, they're looking at this trick and they're not sure who is on the team. They might think it's that person, but also Porco is winning this, and maybe they just don't know if Porco's good or not yet, so they don't want to give Porco too many points. The funny thing about their hand is they just have huge honkers of points. So they could make the trick worth minus points by tossing in this 9. That'd kind of bomb the trick there. But maybe they're not 100% sure, so they're trying to make a little bit of a lukewarm guess, and they put a 6 in there. So again, highest trump would win the trick, so that's Porco. They'll collect these cards. And looking at these cards as a scoring example, again, this suit is minus points, so that's -6. Every other suit is positive points, so +6, so those kind of wash out. So this trick was worth 11 points, which is pretty good. Then the winner of the trick would just lead to the next trick, and this continues on for each of the 8 tricks. At the very end, everyone would find out, obviously, what team they're on, so then they can combine the cards and count up and see what the points are for each team. So again, this player bid 1 plus 10, so they would need to have 11 more points than the other team. So if they did, they would win along with their secret partner. If they didn't, that team would lose and the other players would win. You can just play a hand of Vivaldi, that's totally fine. In the rules, they also give a recommendation of playing multiple hands in kind of a point system. And how that works is if the caller, who's the person who sets the trump, if they win, they'll get 2 points, and their hidden friend would get 1, with everyone else losing a point. Or if they lost, the caller would lose 2 points, their friend would lose 1, and everyone else would get 1 point. In that advanced scoring, if there's ever a case where the caller calls one of their own cards, so maybe whoever had this hand called Winter and said 1, and they're on their own team, then that means the caller would get either +3 if they won alone, or -3 if they lost alone. And that's how to play Vivaldi. So that is Vivaldi. Nope. Okay. So that is Vivaldi, and I really like it. I feel like it's super interesting to see a very stripped down, basic game where the rules are very straightforward, the deck is very straightforward, there's not a lot of wackiness to it, and the premise is simple, and then that kind of opens itself up for interesting plays or a lot of space for players to read into. Like in that example we covered where if a player plays negative points to a trick that a non-caller is playing, what does that mean, right? It's fun to read into players' interactions even when they're just playing a card that they didn't think was super important or had a bunch of meaning to it. but everyone at the table is reading into it, and it's always fun when every card, not just every trick or every hand, but every card is kind of dripping with suspicion. Especially with that one player who's known, their plays kind of mean a lot to the table. Like what they do and then how players bounce off of what they do matters so much. We covered a game, which I think is great, Shamans, where it has kind of, you're not sure who's on your team, right? Or if a player's good or not. And that has a ton of powers and a ton of, wackiness to it. And this can capture that same feeling, really, with just a simple deck and a simple rule set. And again, that game's amazing. This game's also great. I think that it's cool that trick-taking can kind of run those both sides, but it's interesting that like this game can just instill in players just a heavy sense of suspicion just right off the start. Quick note about the production, and again, if you just make this with a standard deck of cards, which you can, because it's just 1 through 10 in 4 suits. This specific edition, while the seasons look cool, they didn't include the symbols underneath the suits, which in like low light, or if you're having trouble differentiating the colors, was just brutal. Like it soured more than one game session of this, which is kind of just egregious. But please, oh my gosh, put suits underneath the ranks. It's kind of a no-brainer at this point. For trick-taking games, I beg of you, please do this. Another nitpick is kind of in the rules. I don't get why you start at 10 for the bidding. Literally every single time, every single hand that we played, it gets to at least 1, and it's kind of just like a waste of time. A lot of times we would just go from 1, and I know I was talking to someone about this where there's twists on the rules, or I guess like you can just teach it however you want, where you just say you always start at 1, and then you bid 1 plus whatever the bid amount is whenever you want to actually start increasing the bidding. I think that's just the way to go. It's pretty confusing to teach people and be like, well, you start at 10 and then you go down to 6 or 1 or whatever it is, and then you start adding on points, and people are like, wait, so you increase the bid by going down, and it's just like super confusing. So if you were to teach this game, and I know I didn't do it in the actual teach because I felt it would be a little disingenuous, but if you were to actually teach this game, I would just say start at 1, and then if you want to set trump, players just bid points until everyone passes. Because, at least someone's going to bid 1 point or 2 points. It's not that big of a deal to, especially if you're declaring trump, to try to make that point differential of like 1 or 2 as opposed to just 1. So yeah, I think I'm ranting now, but I feel like a lot of games could use from like a step back where you're giving players choice, but is that choice interesting, especially if it just gets overwritten a lot? I've heard this in a lot of designs where like more choice isn't necessarily good because you're wasting time on meaningless choices to take away time from meaningful choices, and I feel like that's kind of what's going on here. Man, I'm just very ranty right now. I don't mean it. It's a good game. Let's get back to what's good. Speaking of what's good and that bidding, I think that bidding's fantastic though. Like how many points are you willing to spend to be able to bid? It's funny also if you get dealt a really good hand of like a lot of 1 suit, but you do have the 1 in the hand, whether you risk it to go alone. There's a kind of really funny swap in the game if you go alone that players don't know, but you can kind of slowly tell over the course of the hand quicker, right? Because most players aren't helping you. And there's a funny reaction when players realize, oh, it's a 4 versus 1 game. And you as the caller, you hope that doesn't happen sooner. But I've seen it happen a little earlier in the round than expected. And players just dogpile on the caller, and it's hilarious. There's a fun tension how it's just 8 tricks. I know there's games like Euchre where the hands are pretty small, like small hand and trick taking maybe is around 5 or 6. So I know 8 isn't necessarily small. I think it's kind of like the Goldilocks, just right for this situation, but it isn't like too long. So I think the game has just the right amount of trick space and hand flexibility to allow for bidding, but also still keep the trick taking tight. especially with 5 players. Like, playing 5 cards to the trick is a fair amount, so you wouldn't want to drag that out too much. And I feel like, again, 8 is just like perfect. So that is Vivaldi, and I really enjoyed it though. I know I ragged a little bit on the production and kind of the rules around it, but once you get going, it's streamlined, it's fun, there's great moments, there's a lot of tension. I do want to give it the seal, but I think I want to play the game it's kind of based on, which is Briscola Kiyamata, and see if I like that one more or less. I've heard it's obviously pretty similar, but in Briscola you don't have the pain suit. So I've heard that the team, like the person who's the secret, like hidden friend, the person who's on the same team as the caller, the person who decides what trump is, that is a little harder to eke out. It comes out a little slower. So I don't know if I'd like that as much. And I also kind of personally like in the scoring where when there's a negative and a positive, you can just minus those out. It makes for like a really clean, quick scoring as opposed to just adding everything. So we'll see if this gets the seal, as if that means anything ever at all. As if the makers of Vivaldi are waiting on bated breath over this monstrosity of an award. But all that to say, definitely check it out, especially because it's pretty easy to make. Just need a deck of cards. And 5 players is not the easiest to get to the table, but I do kind of appreciate a game it's 5 players. Like, you know what player count it's best at, and you know exactly kind of the idea of the game when you sit down to play it. So if you get 5 players, try it. It's a good one. You can definitely just play one hand too, so it's a quick one as well. Quick rules teach. I'm just ranting again, but thanks so much for watching.